I implemented similar workflows and processes for everything because it was the same thing. I felt like everything was repeatable. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. And so I came up with processes because, again, I was told what to do, but not how to do it. After I created a few of these, I thought, you know what? I want to make people's lives easier. I don't think it needs to be complicated. Why are we wasting time? And so I created my business really wanting to help people realize that it doesn't have to be so complicated.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I am so excited about today's guest. Her name is Ronna Belinky, and she helps busy people create simple, personalized systems to manage their time and to dos with clarity and intention. She teaches simple, effective time management strategies that help you organize both your personal and professional life. And whether it's through her hands on notebooks with Ronna workshops, which I highly recommend, private one-on-one sessions, or presentations to groups or teams. Her goal is to help you build a planning process that works for you. You will feel less stress, have more time for things that make you happy, and she's just a wonderful human being. So I want to say a very big welcome to Ronna Belinky. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here, and I really appreciate that you asked me.
Of course, of course. And I should also note that Ronna was kind of the final step. She was very encouraging of me to start this podcast. So I think that should also be acknowledged.
I'm so glad. That makes me so happy. I love that.
Let's get into some questions here. I think what you do is so wonderful. And so I would like to know, how did you get started doing all this?
So I have an interesting story. So my first career was in TV sitcom production, and I worked on many TV shows, many pilots, a reunion special. We were doing so many things at the same time. And I tell people that when I was introduced to working in TV, everybody told me what to do, but they didn't tell me how to do it. And so I had to come up with all of my own processes and systems and then pass them on to the people that worked for me. And so I came up with these workflows because every episode was a repeatable project, basically. And so I came up with these processes. And then what I did was when I pivoted and I started working in the nonprofit world when I moved back to Chicago, I implemented similar workflows and processes for everything because it was the same thing. I felt like everything was repeatable. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. And so I came up with processes because, again, I was told what to do, but not how to do it. After I created a few of these, I thought, you know what? I want to make people's lives easier. I don't think it needs to be complicated. Why are we wasting time? And so I created my business really wanting to help people realize that it doesn't have to be so complicated.
I love it. I love it. And when you and I first met, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy we met." Because you do have you just have such a natural ability to just create these workflows that for my brain are often it's very time for me is abstract at best. And so having these kind of workflows has been really helpful. If nothing else, it just gives me a built-in checklist for certain things. But the things that you think to add to them, right, in certain situations, it makes a huge difference. You often talk about building systems the way your brain works, not forcing yourself into someone else's mold, which I love. Can you share a personal story when you realized that this was a game changer for you?
Yes. So I started my business. And when I first started it, I was working with small businesses and a lot of nonprofits with a Google Sheet workflow that I had created. And so many times I've said to myself, shouldn't you know how to use project management software because you are helping people manage their projects? And the more and more I thought about it, I thought, you know what? My brain looks at a project management tool and it scrambles everything. I can't understand it. And I felt really inferior. And I felt like, oh my gosh, if I can't learn how to use this, how can I teach people how to be productive? And my brain, it just doesn't work for me. And so I thought, you know what, if my brain doesn't work that way, everybody's brains work differently. And so that's why I teach. It's not one size fits all the way I teach because I really get to know you first and figure out how do you work well. because I discovered that for myself too, in a surprising way, considering what I do. But it's okay because I'm really productive and I don't need to use that software. But I will say, I'm not adverse to trying to learn it and pick things up again, because I think that's part of this whole process is something might not work for you today, but that doesn't mean it's not going to work for you in the future, which I've found with methods for myself.
Yes, yes. And, as somebody whose brain definitely works differently, right? I love that you understand that concept because not everybody does. It's unfortunate because when I have clients and they're so frustrated because they've been trying to do things, I'm like, yeah, but you've been trying to do it the neurotypical way. And that is kind of a one size fits all mold. And so when they can wrap their mind around, oh, I can do this differently and it's okay. Yes, please do. So I love that you get that aspect of that. Many women in our community were diagnosed later in life and feel overwhelmed by traditional productivity advice. What is a common myth about workflows or organization you wish you could debunk for them?
There is a planner that's going to solve all of your problems. That is not true. They say there's a planner that's going to solve all your problems. You should buy that first and then figure out how to use it. No. So, my whole thing is figure out how your brain works best, come up with a process or a system, and then find the tool afterwards. Because, I've worked with clients, one rebels against deadlines. So, she didn't want a dated planner. Somebody else in the past had really had a lot of success with the Franklin planning system, which is one of the first things that I used. And so I knew something dated would work for her. So, everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to buy this. And then they get so frustrated. It's because they're doing it the wrong way. It's really the other way around.
Hmm.
So yeah.
That's a really good point. I do have a planner I like, and I like it. When I first saw the ad for it, I hesitated because I thought, "Oh, here we go again. I'm going to do this is the planner that's going to change my life. How many times do I got to go down this road?" And then I finally, after I literally filled the cart and then emptied it probably 18 times that weekend, and then I heard in one of their videos, they said that there was an ADHD coach who used it. I was like, okay, sold. And I loved it because I could see the month and the week at the same time. And that changed everything for me. I can't do this whole like back and forth thing. My brain hates that. But that was what worked for me, right? Everybody has a different way of handling it. And planners for sure. Oh my gosh. I could put my kids through college on the amount of money I've spent on planners in my lifetime. I swear to God. It's just horrible.
You're not the only one. You're
Yeah.
not the only one. And it's interesting because what you said was such a small change. Just
Hmm.
seeing the month and the week at the same time, it's such a small change, but it made all the difference.
It did. It made a huge difference. And then I even didn't use it for a while. Everything just kind of started blowing up. And it was because I couldn't see where anything, I was like, go back to using the planner. This one actually does work. Okay, great. All right. So bite sized systems are at the heart of your approach. And that is something that I am constantly trying to teach my clients to do as well. So, can you walk us through a real life example of how breaking things down made a breakthrough for one of your clients?
Sure. So I think that our problem is that everything feels too overwhelming until you break it down. And also everything feels urgent. So you think, oh my gosh, I need to get everything done right away, right now. And it's just not true. So I worked with a co-working space that's local here. They're very organized, but they really needed a timeline to open up their new location. And they had obviously already opened up a location, but they needed something documented. And they kept on saying, this is all in our head. And that's what most people that I work with say. And so they needed a
Mm,
pace to do list. They needed to know that they didn't need to get everything done right away. And it was a real game changer because the best thing about my workflows is that they're all repeatable because these are repeatable processes. They're going to open up a new co-working space, I'm sure, again. And now they have a timeline for exactly what to do, when to do it. They change the date at the top of the document of their opening date, and then all of the to-do dates auto-calculate. So it's just not reinventing the wheel. And I think that we do this so many times because we don't take the time to document the process that we're doing.
yes. And that just that alone, like, oh, all I have to do is change one thing and the rest of it fills in. Now, for people with ADHD, the struggle is still okay. Now I know when it's due, but am I going to do it? That's a whole other thing.
Yes.
And actually, that brings me to my next question, which is so ADHD is often described as a quote unquote motivation roller coaster. That is an understatement. So, how do you help clients design routines that work even when the motivation or focus is low?
So I always remind people that motivation naturally goes up and down, and it actually happens for me too all the time. I think starting with really small steps instead of having a huge overwhelming, project or something that you're working on, really break it down into very doable small steps. And that way, even when you're not motivated, a one small thing that you can do that you can check off that list is super motivating, which I think sets you up for success. And I think that we get so demotivated so much that even something really small can really make you feel successful and then motivated throughout the day. It's interesting. I'm learning a lot from you because, as you know, I am learning so much about ADHD through you. And one thing that I've started working on with clients is gamifying, which I think is brilliant. It's not something I never thought about before, but turning things into a bit of a challenge, which I think can be more motivating when you don't feel as motivated. That like you always say the dopamine. So, getting a dopamine hit, I think is huge. I also tell people to be prepared to pivot and be okay with it. I think a part of a lot of people's issues is that they get demotivated and then they just quit altogether. But, if you keep on going and you don't quit, I think that there's always tomorrow. I think that it's a fine balance between that and, not getting things done. But, being compassionate with yourself too. I think that's really important.
I agree. That is a big part of it. Especially, I think women in general, we tend to be very hard on ourselves. Women with ADHD, I say it all the time, we are sometimes our own worst bullies and we are not very compassionate to ourselves. You absolutely nailed it, which is sometimes just taking a tiny step. What you're looking for, people tend to think that they need to have the motivation first, but very often, especially if you have ADHD, you have to have the momentum to get the motivation. So I often use the example of laundry because laundry is my nemesis. And I will have this mound that's just sitting there taunting me every time I walk by it. And so what I'll do is I'll finally go, okay, this is ridiculous. I need to do this. Okay, I'm just going to hang or fold three things, just three things. The deal I have with myself is if I truly am just in a place where I just cannot do the rest today, fine. I did what I committed to. I did three things. But usually I go, okay, that was easy. Okay, I can do three more. And it's like, okay, now I can do three more. And then eventually it's done. Right. So, but yeah, the gamifying, it's a good one. It really is. And it really helps again with that momentum, which is really what we're all looking for to just get the ball rolling. So love it. Love it. So, speaking of self compassion, can you describe the emotional side of decluttering workflows? How does shifting from chaos to clarity affect your clients mentally and emotionally?
I think that creating processes takes away exhaustion. Everybody always says, like I said before with that one client, I didn't realize how much I had in my head. There's this David Allen quote. He's great. He wrote a great time management book called Getting Things Done. I'll just summarize it for you right now. He says your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. And so I think that process of just writing things down allows you to be more present because if you think about it, if you know you have a reliable place to put everything and you know you can count on that system, then you don't have to overwhelm yourself with all of that mental energy, which is just exhausting. I mean, life is hard enough, right? So
Yes.
so when you do some of these things, then you avoid, waking up at 3 in the morning thinking, oh my gosh, I forgot to do this and things like that. And so I think it reduces your stress. It makes you be more proactive than reactive because when you're reacting to all of these things that are coming at you, it's very stressful. But if you can anticipate them, it's just such a load off your back. And it's also just really, it's also is motivating, I think. And so the stress goes away. And, I just think it gives you so much mental energy back that a lot of us as women, we hold a lot of that. We have a lot of mental overload and it is just exhausting and people don't think about it that way.
Yeah, I constantly talk to my clients about we are reducing the mental load. Externalize your thoughts. Get it out of your head. Because the minute you think, I'll remember that, I don't need to write it down, it's gone. You
Mhm.
can even have systems. So I think I've shared this with people in the past. So I discovered that on the iPhone, I don't want to say it too loud because I'm using the phone for my camera. I don't want to set off Siri, but I will say, "Hey Siri, remind me of this idea when I get home." Because of course I always have these amazing ideas when I'm driving and I can't stop to write them down, right? And that's what it does. It then every time I come home, it will remind me of it until I check off the box. Reducing that mental load is so important. And you're right, it's exhausting. It is
Mhm.
exhausting trying to keep all that in your head. And so, yeah, you nailed it on the head there. What are some tiny steps that women with ADHD can take now, even before their big systems are running smoothly?
Okay, if you walk away with anything today, I think it is figure out when you have the most energy and do your most difficult tasks during that time. It's very simple, and people don't think about it, and people also don't do it. And if you just make that one switch, I feel like that changed everything for me. There are
I
certain
completely agree.
it's just such a simple thing, but if you're working against yourself and your natural rhythms, you're just not able to get the same amount of quality work done or even able to do it. There are certain things that my husband always jokes with me and says, I can't ask you anything after 4 p.m. I mean, it's true. I'm a morning person. My brain doesn't function the same way at 4 that it does at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And that's okay, you know?
Yes, exactly.
So I think the other thing is limit your distractions. I think that that is a huge, huge problem with productivity. Turn off your phone, put it in a different room, turn it on do not disturb, put the people who are most important to you or your children's school, if you have children, put those on emergency bypass and just put the phone away because it is amazing how much you can get done without a distraction.
Yes, I completely agree. Regarding the energy part that is one of my favorite things to teach people about because ADHD energy is different because of the fact that our brain has to work harder to do what everyone else considers to be quote unquote easy things. So we automatically are going to be we're just going to have different energy. And like you said, when you can figure out when your best energy is, my best energy is also in the morning. And so I get so much more done now that I finally accepted that I'm a morning person. 'Cause it didn't used to be. Children and jobs change that, but I get so much more done. Like you said,
Mhm.
if you're trying to like do heavy mental things at a time when you're tired, like I don't schedule clients, I don't schedule meetings usually between 2 and 3:30 most days unless I really have to because that is not I like go and take a nap and I just really rest and rejuvenate. And then I go in and start working again. And then I get a kind of a second wind around 4 o'clock. And then I can get a few more things done. And it makes such a big difference. You said it yourself, like when I realized that, it really changed everything. And that's how it was for me too. So I hope people will really take that into consideration because it is a big deal. So, when a woman feels she has failed at planners, apps, and other expert systems, where do you start with her? Like, how do you rebuild her trust in her own brain?
Well, the first thing I like to say is you didn't fail. It was just not the right system for you or the right planner for you or the right app for you. So funny because everybody thinks, oh, digital. Well, everyone has to be digital. Well, I use a hybrid system. I use paper and digital. So what's wrong with that? I'm really productive with paper systems.
Hmm.
First, you did not fail. Also, I like to tell people it takes practice to figure out what works for you. So when I work with a client, we'll try a strategy and then I'll say, work with this for a couple weeks and our next session will be after you've worked with this and tried it because it's a lot of practice, even me. So even I do that with myself. I mean, I'm practicing and thinking of new things all the time. I mean, some things work for me now that didn't work for me before. It's also the judgment piece, like stop judging yourself. You're not alone because so many people feel this way. Stop being a perfectionist. I think it's really hard. I am a recovering perfectionist in some ways. I still am, and I work on it really hard. It's a problem that, as you said, a lot of women with ADHD have. I also like to tell people like not to rush the process And then also, I just like to get to know women better, because so much of these processes and systems is so personal. So don't feel bad because just because it worked for one person, it does not mean it's going to work for you. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, and that makes me very happy that you say that. That's exactly right. I always tell people this will work until it doesn't. And then you have to have a backup plan. And every woman I know with ADHD is like, I get that. That doesn't mean that you have somehow failed when the first one stops working. It's just our brain goes, oh, this isn't novel anymore. Time to find something else or whatever it is, right? And I always say, look at the entire system, like look at each component of that system to see where maybe you just need to tweak it a little bit because it doesn't mean you have to throw the whole system out because sometimes maybe you've evolved and maybe you don't need a certain aspect of it, right? Or maybe you just need to tweak it to maybe a certain aspect just needs to be a little bit longer or whatever. But it's just you working with your brain. And I think this is whether you have ADHD or not. Like, I think learning to work with your brain is incredibly important because when you can really start to trust yourself, trust your judgment, and you're not thinking that you're failing all the time, things really start to shift after that. So the more that women can hear, you didn't fail, this just doesn't work for your brain, it's better, right? There's a lot of stuff out there that's just like, this works for, but it works for all these people. It works for this person and this person. I'm like, it doesn't matter if it works for them. If it doesn't work for you, I joke all the time that people with ADHD are out of the box thinkers about everything except executive functioning. And then we're trying to shove ourselves into the executive functioning box. And I'm like, you are not going to fit in a box. You are a shiny disco globe. You are just way more, you got way more going on there. And so you need to find something that's going to work with all that awesomeness, right? All that glitter and glowing. You just got to find out what works where your globe is going to fit. So,
I love that. Can I add one more thing?
yes.
Nobody knows you better than you do.
Hmm.
So I think that have the faith in yourself that you know the answers. You might need help coming up with, processes and things like that, but nobody knows you better than you.
I love that. And just because you need support in certain areas does not mean you're broken. Everybody needs support in some areas of their life. It doesn't mean that they're broken. It just means they need some support there. It's not a big deal. So, looking back on your own journey, what messy first step would you encourage our listeners to take if they're feeling stuck right now?
So I would say just do one thing. It's how I started my business too, and then realize that everything is not urgent. So do one thing and then don't overwhelm yourself. I love this. There's this one acronym that I heard from someone. I can't remember where I heard it. It's GEMO, good enough, move on.
I
And it kind of changed my life
love
because
it.
as a perfectionist, I have to self do a lot of self-talk and say that to myself a lot. Um and related to that, like what you do doesn't have to be fancy. Just, start really small, write one thing down. It doesn't need to make sense to anybody except you. So just get started.
I love that. Good
Mhm.
enough, move on. Yeah, I really struggle with that. Even when I'm editing these podcasts and things, I'm like, well, let me just, and then I'm like, what are you doing? Just no one's expecting perfection. Perfection doesn't exist. Perfection doesn't exist. And I have to repeat that mantra myself. So, but I love
Yes.
that. I love that acronym. For those struggling with guilt or shame around disorganization, what would you want them to hear from you today?
So I like to give people a little pep talk and just say, this is hard. You're not alone. Be compassionate with yourself. You can do this, even though it's hard. I say to people, if I didn't think this, there's no way I would have this business. I really believe in this. I believe in systems. I believe you can do really small things that make such a big difference. I love when you talk about your lens of curiosity instead of guilt or shame. And I think that a lot of people don't think that way. So be curious about yourself. Think, you know what? I am learning about myself. That's the way I'm going to be successful in anything I do. And so be curious instead of be so judgmental because it's just working against yourself.
I say judgment just brings more judgment. And we're like Olympic gold medal winners when it comes to judging ourselves. But the curiosity brings answers. And it also tends to separate you a little bit from the situation where now it's sort of like, oh, okay. So I'm like, what? Okay. So what's going on here? Like if you're feeling resistance to doing a task, okay, I'm feeling some resistance. What's going on? Does this feel too big? Does it feel like it's going to take too long? Am I not sure what the next step is? Is it just boring and I don't, it doesn't give me any dopamine? That's an okay answer because sometimes that is what it is, especially if you have ADHD, right? So I'm really glad you brought up the lens of curiosity. I'm glad because I love that. Okay. And I also want to let people know too. So I I did your Notebooks with Ronna workshop and I loved it in large part because you made us do the work during the workshop. It wasn't one of those, okay, and then when you get around to it, you'll do this and this and this. And for those of you who don't know, what she has you do is literally you go through like your entire year of what are things that you do every year that you know you have to do, and let's get them into a calendar type form, right? Or a notebook month by month. You can always tweak it. But she has this like comprehensive list of things. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. Oh, I didn't even think of that. So then I put it in my planner in the month that's appropriate, right? And then I can check it off. And it's just something I can carry over from year to year. And it is brilliant. So brilliant because you did all the heavy lifting putting that list together. And but again, because you had us do it during the workshop, because I think a lot of people tend to go, okay, well, I'll do it later. Oh, I'll do it later. It's like, no, 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 you're at the workshop. You're going to do it now, right? Like do it now. And it takes half the difficulty out of it. I usually try to, if I see it, I usually promote her Notebooks with Ronna workshop on my Instagram and Facebook stories and things like that. So keep an eye out. When is your next one, by the way?
Thank you so much for saying that. So I have one in person on December 7th in Highland Park, Illinois. I have one virtually on December 9th. And
Okay.
then I have another virtual one January 11th, but I just launched doing them for small groups. So if
Oh,
you've got a group of friends that you want to get together, or your book club, or your coworkers, or your family members, you can curate your own group and then contact me. You can email me and get your own group together and do it together. I think it's really nice, even virtually. It doesn't matter. It could be in person locally, it could be virtual, but being together in a group, there's some sort of community aspect to it. And I think it's kind of where the magic happens because people will ask questions and then somebody will say, oh, yes, I didn't think of that. And it's really collaborative. And I think that you felt that too.
yeah, I did. I did the
It's-
virtual version because I was sick for your in-person one. I was very sad. And so I did the virtual one. And there were a couple people who mentioned, like, oh, what about this being on the list? And I was like, oh, yeah, I think it was like a vet appointment or something. I don't know. And it was just like, oh, yeah, I need to put that on there. That kind of stuff. Dog grooming, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, but it was great. And yeah, the collaborative part of it. And we're going to have all of Rhonda's information in the show notes. So you can find all of her great stuff there. All right, so we are on now to the rapid fire round here. So I'm going to ask you a few questions and just answer just top of your head whatever comes to mind. So the first one is the one tool or object on your desk you can't work without.
My Erin Condren daily planner for my work.
Awesome. What's a rule about productivity you joyfully ignore?
This is always hustle, that you have to hustle in order to be more productive and just be busy and just busy yourself with all sorts of things. I think that's so wrong. And I also really believe in rest and breaks. They make you more productive.
Yes. Yep. I literally have to train people how to take breaks because we don't know how to. We're afraid, at least in the ADHD world, we are afraid that if we stop to take a break, we won't go back to what we're doing. So I have like rules in place so that that is less likely to happen. But yeah, if you don't rest and you just keep working and working and working, the quality of your work goes in the toilet. Okay. Next
Mhm.
question. Favorite comfort food after a long, chaotic day?
Fish tacos.
Ooh. Oh, I haven't had those in a long time. Think I know what I'm having for lunch. All right. What is one thing about ADHD you wish people would finally get?
You're not lazy. This is hard.
Yeah, the lazy label is so detrimental to self confidence. especially in girls, because then we grow up to be women who are not confident. And it's okay that it's hard right now. You're figuring it all out. It doesn't always stay hard. The more you learn how your brain works, the more you get tools and resources like Rana, like me, like other podcasts, etc., your brain starts to make so much more sense to you until your decisions start to make so much more sense to you. And then you can start making better choices for yourself that really empower you instead of keeping you small. That's my little final take on that part. So, all right, Rana, thank you so, so much. Again, I'm so happy you're here. I think what you do is so great. I got so much out of that workshop, as I think I've mentioned a few times now. I thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much to you for having me and also for teaching me so much about women with ADHD. It has been invaluable, and the way you teach it is in a way that I can understand it. And I'm just so appreciative. I feel like you've given me so much value for the people I work with.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. If you like what you've heard, if you're feeling a bit seen or learn something that you might be able to try today, please follow the show, leave a comment, or share with a friend or family member who also wants to be better at their time.